Hello students, today we can see the topic respiration in plants. All organisms breathe to live. Whether it is unicellular or multicellular organisms, all organisms respire, isn't it? Even the unicellular microbes, they used to take in oxygen and leave out carbon dioxide by the process of diffusion, isn't it? Same way, the higher organisms like plants, animals, fungi also take in oxygen and leave out carbon dioxide, and all these organisms need energy for carrying out their daily life activities like digestion, absorption, transport, movement, reproduction, or even respiration, isn't it? And from where does this energy come from? It is obtained from the food, isn't it? So we can say all energy which are required for the life processes is obtained by the oxidation of food. So when the food is broken down, energy will be released, and that energy will be used for performing all the life activities or the life processes of an organism. Okay, as you all know, the plants, that is the green plants and cyanobacteria, can prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. In the previous chapter we have seen that photosynthesis occurs in the green plants as well as even in cyanobacteria. So here they used to trap the light energy and they convert it into chemical energy, and that chemical energy will be stored in the bonds of carbohydrate like glucose, sucrose and starch. Okay, and in plants you have seen that in the leaf the mesophyll cells are there, which are having the organelle called the chloroplast, and that chloroplast is having the chlorophyll pigment which trap the light energy which can help in photosynthesis. Okay, and we can say that all plant cells cannot photosynthesize, isn't it? Only the cells which are having the chlorophyll pigment in them can help in trapping the light energy, and that can be converted into chemical energy. Now what about the other cells which are non-green in color? They need food for oxidation. So how they will get the food? The green parts which are preparing the food will be transferring that food. So that food will be translocated to the non-green parts of the plant. Thus the non-green parts of the plants also get the food. Okay, now what about the animals? Animals are heterotrophic in nature because they cannot prepare their own food and they depend on other organisms for their food, isn't it? They obtain the food directly from the plant or indirectly from the plant. If it is a herbivorous animal, herbivores means what? Plant eating animals. So these herbivores can get the food from the plants directly because they feed on the plants directly. Okay, but on the other hand, the carnivores, what are carnivores? The flesh eating animals are called carnivores. They eat other animals, isn't it? So the carnivores will get the food from plant indirectly because they never eat the plant directly. They eat the animals which eat the plant, isn't it? Thus they can get the food. Okay, and what about saprophytes? Saprophytes like fungi, they depend on the dead and decaying organic matter. Okay, so thus all the organisms obtain the food from either directly from the plant or from if or indirectly they are getting by eating the animals, or even from the dead or decayed organic matter the organisms get food, isn't it? Now in this chapter we can see about the cellular respiration. Cellular respiration means what? The respiration which takes place inside the cell, isn't it? That means it is the mechanism of breakdown of food material within the cell, inside the cell, to release energy and trapping this energy for the synthesis of ATP. Okay, so what happens inside the cell? The food will be broken down. As a result, energy will be released, and this energy will be stored in the form of ATP molecules. Okay, so about that we can see, or about this cellular respiration we can see in this chapter. Okay. Where does respiration occur? Respiration takes place in the cytoplasm as well as in the mitochondria in eukaryotes. In prokaryotes, as they do not have mitochondria, it occurs in the cytoplasm as well as in the inner side of the cell membrane. Okay, so the breakdown of complex molecule to release energy, that is respiration, takes place in the cytoplasm and mitochondria. So what is respiration? It is the process of breaking of CC bond. CC bond means the bond which is present between the carbon atoms in the complex organic molecules. Okay, so the process of breaking of CC bonds of complex compounds through oxidation to release considerable amount of energy is called respiration. Okay, so what is respiration? It is the process of breaking down of CC bonds of complex organic compounds through oxidation to release large amount of energy is called respiration. And what is respiratory substrate? The compounds or the substances that are oxidized during respiration to release more amount of energy are said to be as respiratory substrates. Usually, carbohydrate act as the respiratory substrate. So, carbohydrate is the main respiratory substrate which is oxidized to release energy. Okay, you might have studied in your lower classes as carbohydrate is an energy releasing food, isn't it? So it is oxidized to release more amount of energy. But in addition to that, proteins, fats and even some organic acids can also be used as the respiratory substrate to release energy. Okay, and during oxidation of these organic compounds, don't think that energy will be released in a single step process freely into the cytoplasm. It is not so. Then what happens? Oxidation is a series of slow stepwise reaction, and each step is catalyzed by an enzyme, and the energy which is released will be trapped as chemical energy in the form of ATP. That is, the energy will be stored in the form of ATP. What is ATP? ATP is adenosine triphosphate. Okay, so the ATP molecule is having three phosphates, and the bond which is present between this phosphate is high energy bond which can store more amount of energy in it, and when it is broken it can release considerable amount of energy. Okay, so ATP acts as a energy currency of the cell. As it can store energy and as it can release energy, it is considered as the energy currency of the cell. Okay, so whenever energy is required for any life process inside the cell, the ATP will be broken down and it releases energy, and that energy will be used for various life processes. Is it clear? Do plants breathe? The answer will be yes, isn't it? The plants also respire like animals. They take in oxygen and they give out carbon dioxide. Animals are having specialized respiratory organs for gas exchange, isn't it? But the plants are not having any such specialized respiratory organs. Even though they are not having specialized respiratory organs, they are having openings like stomata and lenticels for gas exchange. What is stomata? These are the openings which are present on the epidermis of leaves. And what are lenticels? These are the openings present on the bark of the woody plants. So through these openings, stomata and lenticels, gas exchange can occur or take place in plants. Okay. Now, even though they are not having the respiratory organ, how they are able to take care of its gas exchange needs? One is, each part of the plant take care of its own gas exchange need. Okay, that is, most of the part of the plant is exposed to the atmosphere and they are having the openings like stomata and lenticels. So each and every part of the plant take care of its own gas exchange needs, and only very little transport of gas occurs from one part of the plant to the other. Okay, because why? Because most of the part of the plant is exposed to the atmosphere and they can take care of its own gas exchange needs. Okay, now second point, we can say plants do not present great demands for gas exchange. That means animals are having a faster respiratory or a greater respiratory rate than that of the plants. Okay, if you take the root, stem and leaves of the plants, they respire at a rate far lower than that of the animals. Okay, but during photosynthesis, large amount of gas exchange occurs. So for that, the leaf is well adapted. Okay, so the leaf is adapted to take care of its gas exchange need during the process of photosynthesis. So during photosynthesis, more amount of carbon dioxide will be taken in, and as a result oxygen will be released, isn't it? And when the cells perform photosynthesis, oxygen will be released within the cell itself. Okay, so the plants can take in oxygen from the cell itself. Okay, so that is the second point. Okay, now third, if you see, the distance that the gas must diffuse, even if it is a large bulky plant, is not great. Okay, the distance of diffusion of these gases is not great. They no need to diffuse to a long distance. Why? As I told in the first point itself, most of the part of the plant is subjected to or exposed to the atmosphere, and you all know that in the plants most of the cells are dead cells, isn't it? And the dead cells are some of the cells are present in the bark of the plant, and other dead cells will be normally present inside the woody stem, isn't it? And they are mainly involved in mechanical support. They provide mechanical support to the plant, and most of the living cells will be exposed outside, isn't it? Exposed to the atmosphere. So the gas will be diffusing into the living cells, and from that outer living cells, the gas has to diffuse to the nearby cells, isn't it? Neighboring cells. To a long distance, there is no need of diffusion of such gases. Okay, because most of the plant parts are in contact with the air. Is it clear? And even inside the cell also, inside the plant body also, we can see that if you take the stem, if you take and study the section of a stem or a root or a leaf, in the stem and root cortex region is there, which is formed of parenchyma cells. The parenchyma cells are loosely arranged. Even in the leaf also, we can say the mesophyll cells, they are formed of parenchyma cells which are loosely arranged, and so much of air spaces will be there. Okay, so through these air spaces, the gases can pass through and they can diffuse into the neighboring cells. Okay, so this is how each and every part of the plant can fulfill its gas exchange need. Okay, now as a result of complete combustion of glucose, see, these gases, oxygen is taken to completely oxidize the glucose, isn't it, to release energy. So as a result of the complete combustion of glucose, carbon dioxide and water are released as end product, and a large amount of energy is also released, isn't it? And most of the energy will be given out as water heat. Okay, so don't think only heat is released. Along with the heat, energy which is released can also be stored in the form of ATP molecules, and this energy can be used for various life processes that take place inside the plant body. Okay, we have seen that during respiration, oxygen is utilized and carbon dioxide, water, energy are released as products, isn't it? So for the combustion reaction or oxidation reaction, oxygen is required. But there are several organisms that are adapted to live in anaerobic condition. What is the anaerobic condition? That is absence of oxygen. So several organisms are capable of surviving even in the absence of oxygen. Even in our planet Earth, when the first life originated, there was no oxygen, isn't it? So the first life was able to survive in the absence of oxygen. Okay, so some of the organisms are facultative anaerobes. What do you mean by facultative anaerobes? They can live in the presence of oxygen or even in the absence of oxygen. They are said to be as facultative anaerobes. Some of them are obligate anaerobes. What is obligate anaerobes? They can survive only in the absence of oxygen and they cannot survive in the presence of oxygen. Okay. So in all living organism, whether it is anaerobic organism or aerobic organism, the first step in respiration is glycolysis. We have seen that respiration is a stepwise process. It is not a single step process, isn't it? So the first step in respiration in all the organism is glycolysis. So what is this term glycolysis mean? It actually originated from the Greek word in which glycos means sugar and lysis means splitting. Okay, glycos means sugar and lysis means splitting or breaking. So the term glycolysis means sugar breaking or splitting of sugar. Okay, and the scheme of glycolysis was given by Gustav Emden, Otto Meyerhof and J. Parnas. Okay, this scheme of glycolysis is also said to be as EMP pathway. E refers to Emden, M refers to Meyerhof and P refers to Parnas. Okay, so this pathway or this glycolysis is also said to be as EMP pathway. Okay. Now, this pathway, as I told you, it occurs in all the organism, whether it is an anaerobic organism or aerobic organism. Where does this glycolysis occur? It occurs in the cytoplasm of all the living cell. Okay, in all the living organism, in the cell cytoplasm, glycolysis occurs. So during this glycolysis, glucose will be partially oxidized to form two molecules of pyruvic acid. Okay, partial oxidation of glucose occurs. As a result, two molecules of pyruvic acid will be formed, and it is an anaerobic process. Okay, so here for the first step of respiration, that is for glycolysis to occur, there is no need of oxygen. It can take place in the absence of oxygen. That's why I told this step occurs in anaerobic organism as well as aerobic organism in their cell cytoplasm. Okay. Now, in plants, they derive this glucose from sucrose. What is sucrose? Sucrose is a disaccharide. What is disaccharide? Di means two, saccharide means sugar. Okay, carbohydrates with the two sugar molecules are called as disaccharides. So sucrose is an example of disaccharide. That means it is having two sugar molecules. So first the sucrose will be converted to two monosaccharide. What is monosaccharide? Carbohydrate with the one sugar molecule is called monosaccharide. Mono means single, saccharide means sugar. Okay, carbohydrate with one sugar molecules are called monosaccharide. So this sucrose, which is a disaccharide, will be first converted into glucose and fructose. Glucose and fructose are monosaccharide. Okay, and it is catalyzed by the enzyme invertase. Okay, so invertase converts the sucrose into glucose and fructose, and now these two monosaccharide, that is glucose and fructose, can enter into the glycolytic pathway. Okay, so it can be used in glycolysis, or it can enter into the process called glycolysis. Okay, and it can be converted into two molecules of pyruvic acid. Okay, this is the schematic representation of glycolysis. Now we can see glycolysis in detail. In plants, we have seen that sucrose is converted into one molecule of glucose and another molecule of fructose, isn't it? Both can enter into the glycolytic pathway. So when we see about glucose, glucose will be first phosphorylated to form glucose 6-phosphate by utilizing ATP. So ATP will be converted into ADP and inorganic phosphate, and that phosphate will combine with glucose to form glucose 6-phosphate and is catalyzed by the enzyme hexokinase. This glucose 6-phosphate is now isomerized to fructose 6-phosphate. What are isomers? Isomers are two or more compounds with the same formula and a different arrangement of atoms in them and having different properties. Okay, that is said to be as isomers. So glucose 6-phosphate and fructose 6-phosphate are isomers. This glucose 6-phosphate is now isomerized to fructose 6-phosphate by phosphoglucoisomerase enzyme. Okay. Now, when fructose is involved in this glycolysis, fructose can be converted into fructose 6-phosphate by phosphorylation reaction directly. Okay. Now, this fructose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, or it is also said to be as fructose 1,6-diphosphate by phosphorylation reaction. That means again here one molecule of ATP is utilized. Okay. So, fructose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. That means two phosphates are there. Already in fructose 6-phosphate, one phosphate is there. Now one more ATP is utilized. It is converted into ADP and inorganic phosphate. That inorganic phosphate will combine with fructose 6-phosphate and it becomes fructose 1,6-bisphosphate. That is in the first and in the sixth carbon, the phosphate molecules will be attached. Okay. Yes, so fructose 1,6-bisphosphate is formed from fructose 6-phosphate by the enzyme phosphofructokinase. Okay. Now this fructose 1,6-bisphosphate can be converted into 3-carbon sugar, that is dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Okay. Fructose 1,6-bisphosphate is a 6-carbon sugar which is converted into 3-carbon sugar, that is dihydroxyacetone phosphate and another molecule of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So this reaction is catalyzed by fructose bisphosphate aldolase or fructose diphosphate aldolase enzyme catalyze this reaction. Okay. And here you should know that this dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate are interconvertible. Okay. So dihydroxyacetone phosphate can be now converted into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So two molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate are there. Okay. Now this two molecule of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is converted into two molecules of 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid or otherwise said to be as 1,3-diphosphoglycerate by phosphorylation and dehydrogenation. Okay, dehydrogenation means removal of hydrogen. Phosphorylation means addition of phosphate. Okay, so 2-phosphate is added to this two molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Okay, and these two phosphates are received from phosphoric acid. Okay, so from phosphoric acid 2 phosphates are received and it combined with two molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate to form two molecules of 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid. Okay, and at the same time I told it is dehydrogenation reaction also occurs, isn't it? That means hydrogen is released or removed, isn't it? From where we can say two molecules of NAD are involved, which is reduced to two molecules of NADH. What is NAD? It is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. Okay, so two molecules of NAD is reduced to two molecules of NADH and two hydrogen ions will be released. Okay, that's why this reaction is dehydrogenation and two phosphates are added from phosphoric acid. So this reaction is also said to be as phosphorylation. Thus two molecules of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is now converted into two molecules of 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid, which is catalyzed by the enzyme glyceraldehyde phosphate dehydrogenase. Okay. Now, this two molecule of 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid is converted into two molecule of 3-phosphoglyceric acid or 3-phosphoglycerate by dephosphorylation. What is dephosphorylation? By the removal of phosphate. Okay, so the phosphate which is removed from this two molecules of 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid will be combining with two molecule of ADP to form two molecule of ATP. So two molecules of ATP is synthesized during this reaction. Okay, so two molecules of 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid is now converted into two molecules of 3-phosphoglyceric acid, which is catalyzed by the enzyme phosphoglycerate kinase. Okay, now this 2 molecules of 3-phosphoglycerate or 2 molecules of 3-phosphoglyceric acid is converted into 2 molecules of 2-phosphoglycerate. Here only rearrangement occurs, that is the phosphate which is present in the third carbon is now shifted to the second carbon. Okay, that is rearrangement occurs. So 2 molecules of 3-phosphoglyceric acid is now converted into 2 molecules of 2-phosphoglycerate, which is catalyzed by the enzyme phosphoglycerate mutase. Okay. Now this 2 molecule of 2-phosphoglycerate is converted into 2 molecules of phosphoenol pyruvate by dehydration reaction. Dehydration means removal of water. Okay, so 2 molecules of 2-phosphoglycerate is converted into 2 molecules of phosphoenol pyruvate by the removal of 2 molecules of water, which is catalyzed by the enzyme enolase. Okay, now this 2-phosphoenol pyruvate, 2 molecules of phosphoenol pyruvate is converted into 2 molecules of pyruvate or pyruvic acid, which is also 3-carbon compound by dephosphorylation reaction. What is dephosphorylation? Again, phosphate is removed. So from the name itself you can find that phosphoenol pyruvate. So phosphate is there in that phosphoenol pyruvate is converted into pyruvate or pyruvic acid, in which there is no phosphate. So the phosphate is removed, isn't it? So 2 molecules of phosphoenol pyruvate is converted into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid by the removal of 2 phosphate. These 2 phosphates will combine with the 2 molecule of ADP to form 2 molecule of ATP. Okay, so thus 2 molecules of ATP is formed, and this reaction is catalyzed by pyruvate kinase. Okay, so during this glycolysis, we can say it is a 10-step reaction during which the glucose is converted into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. 1 glucose molecule is converted into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. If fructose is involved in this reaction, again 2 molecules of pyruvic acid can be produced from 1 molecule of fructose. Okay, thus we can say during glycolysis glucose is converted into 2 molecules of pyruvic acid. Okay, now what happens to this pyruvic acid? This pyruvic acid will be entering into lactic acid fermentation or alcoholic fermentation or aerobic respiration according to the nature of cell where the pyruvic acid is formed. Okay, if it is aerobic respiration, then oxygen is utilized in the Krebs cycle which occurs in mitochondria, that we can see next. Okay, now during this glycolysis, what is the net gain of ATP? How many molecules of ATP is synthesized? We can say in the step here, if you see, when 1,3-bisphosphoglyceric acid is converted into 3-phosphoglyceric acid, 2 molecules of ATP is synthesized. When 2-phosphoenol pyruvate is converted into pyruvic acid, again 2 molecules of ATP is synthesized, isn't it? So totally 4 molecules of ATP is synthesized, and here in the beginning of this step, 2 molecules of ATP are utilized, isn't it? When glucose is converted to glucose 6-phosphate, 1 molecule of ATP is utilized. When fructose 6-phosphate is converted into fructose 1,6-bisphosphate, another molecule of ATP is utilized. Okay, so from the 4 total ATP produced, 2 molecule of ATP is utilized. So the net gain of ATP produced during glycolysis is 2 ATP molecule. Okay, and how many NAD is reduced to NADH, or how many NADH are produced? 2 molecules of NADH are produced. Okay, so the number of ATP synthesized and number of NADH produced are essential. We should know it to calculate the total amount of ATP or energy which is released by the oxidation of 1 molecule of glucose. Okay.